Hey everyone, it's Ventus, and I'm here with another episode of Agent Overview. On this episode, I'll be talking about Nika. Nika is one of the strongest agents in the game if you allow her to be. If you allow her to reach the point where she has a lot of items and she has a lot of credits invested into her stats, she can potentially be an agent who carries the entire team, your entire team, single handedly through any mission. She's kind of like a one woman army if you allow her to reach that point. But in order for her to do so, she needs to get past her early weakness. She's kind of terrible in the early game because her augment's not very good early. She can't fully utilize it. It's still a good augment, but she can't fully utilize it. And her starting item is kind of bad in the early game as well because it's hard to use. So let's get into it. Starting with the on-file version, she also has an archive version, but regardless of which one you choose, her stats are the same. She has level 1 of everything. Unlike most agents who have at least one of their stats in level 2, she doesn't have this. And this is primarily because it's a balancing countermeasure for her, so that she's not too strong in the early portions of the game, and she can just scale into the late game after day 4, 5, 6 on endless modes and just carry you. You got to make her early game a bit rougher, so that she has to work to get to that point where she can be that sole carry for your team. She can be the scary one woman army that just destroys every single mission single handedly. And the reason she can do that is because of her augment, Adrenal Regulator. In an emergency, Nika can flood her nervous system with hot liquid aggression. Sometimes she does it just for fun. So she's that kind of person. It's kind of scary. So what this does is it allows Nika to attack twice every turn. She gets an additional attack, and each time she attacks, she gets 3 AP. So 2 attacks, 6 AP every turn. So you can kind of see why she doesn't have any stats invested right when you start with her. It's because she basically has more speed if you play her in this aggressive style. Her augment kind of encourages you to play her very aggressively. You gotta um, take down the guards in order to utilize their attacks, get extra AP from it, and basically you're rewarded for an aggressive playstyle. You have to play aggressively in order to make use of this. And in most cases, in the early portions of the game, day 1 and 2 on campaign, um, even day 3, 4 sometimes in endless mode, you could have a little bit of trouble utilizing this because you gotta invest a lot of money in her. You gotta level up her speed and strength, and you have to give her items to use. Now let's talk about her item, her starting item, Nika's Vault Disruptor. Basically, this is a Vault Disruptor that's a little bit better than the Vault Disruptors that you find in the shops. It consumes only 2 power, but 2 power is still a lot. That is a problem. Um, in the early portions of the game, you don't actually get that much power. Day 1 and 2, most consoles only give you 1 to 2 power, maybe 3 power and 4 power, but that's it. It's not that much. Because you're going to have to be using Incognita to hack, you got to hack mainframe devices, you got to hack cameras to get through the map, otherwise, you just get caught. And if you want money, money is extremely important. If you want credits, then you got to either steal from the guards as well, which requires you to hack the cameras so you can do it safely, and you have to hack the safes in order to steal their contents. So because of all this, because you're going to be using the power, Nika probably can't use her Vault Disruptor very well unless she's partnered with an agent who can generate power for her. So that's her primary weakness. 2 of her primary weaknesses. So that gets me into kind of how it's related items as alongside her augment. If you have a lot of items on her, it means you can continuously use them. Let's say you have 2 neural disruptors. The neural disruptor is the one with the cooldown. The first one, neural disruptor 1, is one with 3-turn cooldown and a 2-turn KO. So if you have 2 of these, then she can use both of them on 1 turn, but of course they'll be on cooldown for 3 turns. But regardless, because you can attack, you're going to be getting extra bonuses from it. You're going to get extra AP from it, and most agents in the game don't have this kind of benefit, so in most cases it's actually better to invest in Nika if you really want her to be strong. You want to give her your weapons, you want to give her everything you got. Because of that, you're going to probably want to invest a lot into strength so you can carry these items and then use them better than almost every other agent can. So if you're going for the aggressive takedown style, taking down the guards, using your attacks to deal a lot of to basically rush through the mission and uh, deal a lot of damage to the guards and become this hyper aggressive agent. You got to invest a lot in strength because you need to carry these items to actually utilize this. Of course, speed is also a good stat. So in most cases, if you're doing this, go for strength and go for speed. Not so much hacking and probably just level 2 anarchy because level 2 anarchy allows you to steal if you do want to kind of play the stealth style. Now, Nika is going to be an aggressive agent no matter what, but you don't have to play this hyper aggression knockdown style. There is another style with Nika, but it requires you to have an item called the tag pistol. The tag pistol is an item that expends 1 power to permanently mark an enemy for their patrol path. You can see the patrol path for the rest of the mission, and basically this is considered an attack. Because it's considered an attack, Nika can use it with Adrenal Regulator. She can use a tag pistol to harmlessly tag an enemy. It's not going to kill them, it's not going to KO them, so you're not going to alert anyone, and you get 3 AP from it. And you also get to see their patrol path for the rest of the mission. So basically, this is the scouting playstyle for Nika. This is a potential playstyle that Nika does a lot better than most agents in the game because even agents like Decker can play the scouting agent pretty well, but Nika does it better as long as she has items. So she's a very item dependent agent. Maybe you haven't realized already. So basically, once you get the tag pistol, if you want to play a kind of scouting style instead of the aggressive knockdown style, this is what you do. You just tag the enemies and you rush through the map, finish the objectives as fast as possible, getting as much as you can along the way. Generally, I like to get every single thing, but if you don't want to do that, you can just skip it. For me, if I'm playing this kind of scouting style Nika, I still want to get everything because you're going to be able to cover the map faster, because you're going to have extra AP by using the tag pistol attacks. It's just going to be a lot easier for you to finish the map and clear the entire map, cover the entire map. That's the stealth playstyle for Nika. If you do this, you're going to want to not get caught. You're going to have to use her extra AP really well, and you're going to have to play a kind of anarchy style. Anarchy is kind of a utility stat that allows you to steal and allows you to steal more. So the more anarchy you get, the more money you can steal, the more items you can steal. So if you're going to play this kind of scouting style, speed and anarchy are the best stats on Nika. Obviously, speed is like the best stat in the game because it gives you so much. It gives you the movement to move around, gives you the ability to scout the guards. Although if you're using a tag pistol, that's not really necessary. You don't have to observe the guards' movements because you're tagging them with the pistol. So in that sense, it's not as necessary. But in order for her to move around the map, she needs AP, and you got to invest in speed. If you do play this kind of utility-based scouting style, and you're investing a lot of anarchy in her, you can actually use shock traps on her. You can use shock traps to put them behind you as you move through the map, and basically cover your rear, cover your flank, so that the enemies don't wake up or follow you or become alert in any way and get through. And obviously this will break your stealth style, but it knocks them down for a couple turns, and a couple turns is all you need for to get through the map really, really quickly if you're playing this kind of scouting style. So those are the two primary styles of Nika. The aggressive, hyper-aggressive knockdown style, and this kind of utility-based scouting style. Whichever one you choose, she's good at both of them. She can do both basically better than any other agent in the game, but of course, like I keep saying, she needs items, she needs stats, and you're going to have to invest in items and stats for her to use in order to make her really good. And that's the on-file version of Nika. I guess one more thing I can add is I don't like Vault Disruptors. I like using Neural Disruptors. Vault Disruptors don't have cooldowns, so you can continuously use them. If you're pairing her with an agent that can generate a lot of power, or if you have programs that can generate a lot of power, then you can use her Vault Disruptor. You can use Vault Disruptors in general, but I still don't like that style. So I like the Neural Disruptors, but that's just me. Alright, so the archive version of Nika is pretty similar to the on-file version. They're both pretty aggressive agents, but the difference is that you're not forced into that aggressive style with the archive version of Nika. You're not forced into that hyper-aggressive KO style. You're not forced into hyper aggressive scouting. You don't have to do that. You can play a more utility role if your team needs that kind of agent. And this is because her augment is different than the on-file version. Discharge rerouter. Nika loves scrambling neurons so much, she had a tech write a custom routine that makes her disruptor recharge itself and everything around it. Once per turn, the agent's disruptor attack reduces all item cooldowns by 1. So whenever she attacks, she reduces her item cooldowns by 1. Every single item she has. This means that if she has 2 items, the augment's not that good. If she has 8 items, the augment is absolutely amazing. But of course, just like the on-file version, very item dependent agent, you have to reach that point where you actually can carry those items. You actually need to reach the point where you can buy those items to even give her. So in the early game, not very good. I'd say that this version is probably even worse than the on-file version in the early portions of the game, just because she's basically completely item dependent. Her effectiveness, her power, lies in her ability to use a lot of items. But once she gets those items, she becomes really good. She becomes insanely good. But like I said, you don't have to play the hyper aggressive style. You don't have to invest too much speed in her. If you want to invest speed to use cloaking rigs, well, that's another story, because cloaking rigs are items. But in general, I found that strength, so that you can carry more items, and anarchy, so that you can use most of the items in the game. Most items in the game that are really useful, they require you to have anarchy to use, so you're going to be investing a lot into strength and anarchy. Now, the issue here is if you invest in anarchy early, you don't actually get much from it. Level 2 anarchy is basically all you need to make use of the stealing, but that's it. That's all you really need. So you won't be able to use a lot of the items early, and again, this is kind of reflecting the fact that she's not very good in the early game. She's gonna need more stats, which require credits, which requires time and basically doing missions to get her to that point. And day 1 and 2, not very good. Day 4, 5, 6, just like the on-file version, that's when she starts kicking off. That's when she starts becoming really good, and that's not going to change between the different versions. But you do want to have a lot of items on her in order to make her really an effective agent. The on-file version, you can kind of get away with having maybe 2, 3 items only, just so you can attack. As long as you can attack, it's okay. This one, you have to have items to be good. You have to have items to maximize your potential. So the issue with this is that you do have to attack. You can't really play a stealth style if you want to make use of this. Otherwise, you might as well pick another agent, right? If you're just gonna play a stealth style and not utilize her really aggressive um, augment that resets her cooldowns, then you might as well play a really passive style of agent. You might as well play something like International or Banks. But this is Nika is for the player who likes to make aggressive plays. You're not forced into that, but you can and you probably should. The thing is, if you do play aggressively, you got to be really careful. Got to be careful of the guards. You have to be really mindful of basically the dangers of each mission. It will get pretty dangerous once it starts getting heated up. Once the alarm level goes up, you will trigger the alarm level to go up a lot faster if you're playing this style, and you're going to need items to back that up. So that's basically it for the archive version. There's really not much else to talk about the archive version specifically, but rather Nika in general. So let's talk about Nika in general for a little bit. Starting off with, why should you start with Nika? And should you start with Nika in general? Is she a good agent to start with? Obviously, the answer is no. She's not good in the early game, so you don't want to start with her. If you're going for the on-file version of Nika, it's okay to not start with her. I think the Vault Disruptor is garbage anyway, so I don't like using Nika as one of my first 2 agents. But if you find her in a detention center, it basically makes no difference. She's going to have her crazy augment, and you have a choice to rescue her whenever you want to. You might be at the point where you have a lot of money, you have a lot of items, and by the time you rescue her, she's going to be really, really good already. So that's why I don't like starting with Nika. Now the issue is the on-file version, the archive version. You have to start with her. You can't find archive agents inside detention centers. So because of this, Nika is probably one of the worst agents to start with, and you're kind of forced to use her. But the reward is nice. You get this agent who can cycle through her cooldowns very quickly, and basically, she probably can't be that one woman army like the on file version can, but she can be extremely useful for your team. She can continuously cloak your team with cloaking rig 3s. She can continuously paralyze enemies, and basically, by the time you keep on using your neural disruptors over and over again, or maybe even vault disruptors, if you do want to use that, if that's your style, then you're gonna have items off cooldown very quickly, even lower cooldowns than their KO time. So paralyzers, they add a lot of time to the KO, like up to 4 or 5 turns, additional turns of KO. Um, Shock Trap 3 is a 5 turn KO with a 5 turn cooldown. If you're just a cooldown, then the enemies are just going to be down forever. Basically, you can make it so the enemies are down forever, and well, you're kind of punished in the early game because you have to start with her. But once you reach that point, she's extremely effective. Now, for agents who work really well with her, let's go with this one first. If you want to start with the on-file version of Nika, you basically have to start with someone who generates power, someone like Prism. Prism generates a lot of power for your team. Central is another one who generates power for your team. International works really well because she can help you maintain power. Her archive version generates power. These are the agents that you want to pair up with Nika if you start with her. If you go with the archive version, it's a bit more complicated. You need to have characters who have starting items, um, like Decker, who can actually do really well in the early game. Decker, I always say, is the agent that you pair up with anyone who has trouble in the early portions of the game. And basically, this will remain regardless of who I'm talking about in these episodes. Decker is that kind of early game carry, and he falls off later on. But if he does his job, then you'll be fine. That his job is to be good early, not to be good late. So if you play Archive Nika, play Decker. Um, Banks could also work with Archive Nika or On-File Nika, just because she gives access to like, every single room. She has a kind of utility role, and she can support Nika really well. Dr. Shu is actually pretty good as well with the on-file version, because you save power by using subdermal tools to break safes, because the archive version actually generates power whenever you use an item with a cooldown of 3 or more. So if you like playing a super, super aggressive style, if you're just absolutely aggressive, and you want to go crazy all the time, Nika Dr. Shu. Archive Nika Dr. Shu. Archive version, obviously. Um, Both of them very, very aggressive characters, very aggressive agents that just like to take down everything, everyone, and cause chaos. So that could be a potential pairing. It's a pretty good team to start with. As for power, I found that power drip is not very good. It's not aggressive enough for a playstyle, so you want to have something like Faust. If you do go with Faust, you probably want to go with Central because Central gives you power whenever a daemon gets installed. The daemon installs can be kind of annoying, so I probably will just say this is not a really good style. It's a style that's really aggressive and really dangerous, high risk, high reward. So if you like playing like that, if you want a challenge, then maybe do this. But otherwise, stick with Seed or Fusion. Seed is just safer overall. You save a lot of power. And Fusion, if you have a secondary source of power generation like Prism, um, Fusion's a lot easier to use. Just because you have to spend power to get power, Nika, starting off with the archive version, the on-file version may not have enough power to actually use her Vault Disruptor very well. So you're going to have to pair her with not only Fusion to generate power, but someone who can maintain Fusion for you and basically have this kind of synergy between every single thing you have. There's one more point I want to make, and that is don't pick Nika for a campaign unless you want the campaign to be harder. She's very difficult to use in the early game. She's not going to reach the point where she can carry really, really hard just by herself. She can still be a decently strong agent, but she's not going to be that good in campaign. She's more of a character that does really well in endless, so that's probably where you want to play her. If you do want a little bit of a challenge early on in campaign, then Nika can be someone that can basically be a handicap for you, but uh, it's not recommended. Generally, because she does so well with a lot of items, and because you can't get a lot of items in campaign mode, because there's only 4 days in campaign mode, that's the reason you don't want to choose her. You want to choose her in a mode where you can actually make her scale up, actually give her a lot of stats, and let her reach that point where she's just absolutely unstoppable. So that's basically Nika. Aggressive agent, powerhouse agent, really strong agent. Both versions actually, both the on file and the archive version, very good, but very item dependent, very weak early, and don't pick her in campaign. And that's basically it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time for the next agent overview. Goodbye.